podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute professional advice. We make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy, completeness, or applicability of the content.
Hey, everybody, it's Michael and Rebecca. We're back with another podcast here at Sustain Our Shelters. There are a number of topics that we want to discuss today, and I think one of the interesting things that's come up in this whole San Jose Animal Care Center debate is that we see the city seem to take on this position that there's some sort of smear campaign. There's a smear campaign being led by individuals with ulterior motives. And I've actually seen an email from a deputy city manager at the city of San Jose who makes nearly $400,000 a year, who's actually gone in print. He's part of the public record. He's issued this statement to a dog volunteer by the name of Kit O'Doherty. And so I think it would be good to offer some context here, because I'm a firm believer that in order to move forward, you need to look at the past, and you need to look at the mistakes that have been made in the past in order to avoid making them in the future. And what we've seen here with this management team and the way the city manages the shelter is they just continue to make the same mistakes, and repeat the same mistakes. And they never go back to learn from their mistakes. I know that Angel Rios doesn't even want to look at what went wrong and how to correct, past mistakes. So I just kind of wanted to let everybody know, in case they didn't see this, an open letter to the mayor and city council members was authored by Kit O'Doherty, a dog volunteer who I believe she organizes play groups at the shelter. And she authored this open letter to the mayor and city council in the middle of January. And she basically had two large concerns. She felt that even though we've had this audit by the city auditor, Joe Royce, and his team, and it was released to full city council on December 3rd, that even after this audit has come out, the shelter has had two more massive failures. And one of the failures was not hiring the best candidate for the rescue coordinator position, Don Piazza. And the other failure was the death of a dog named Rufus, an adorable pit bull that died after a simple neuter surgery on December 3rd. And so she felt a sense of urgency to reach out to the mayor and city council in a very, very professional, well-written letter. And she also had, I'm looking at it right here. She goes into Don Piazza's track record, documented track record, and, poses the question, how do you not hire this person? You clearly did not hire the best candidate. Instead, you wound up hiring somebody that was largely unproven, and relatively unknown in the rescue community. And so she was just asking, why do you continue to make these same mistakes with the same management team? What are you doing to correct this? And so she wrote this letter and, talked about a shelter being in crisis, but these were her two main focal points. And she had a lot of people sign on to this letter, a lot of rescues, and volunteer groups that, 501c3 nonprofits that have been partners of the shelter at one time or another and want to see the shelter get better. We all want to see the shelter get better. A lot of us remember how it ran just 4 years ago, right? Had a pretty good live release rate for cats just 4 years ago. And we weren't seeing tons of dogs being put on final at the end of a week, and dog volunteers scrambling, only being given 72 hours, 48 hours to come up with
Get that?
rescue
Yeah.
placement? I mean, it really begs the question, just what staff is doing at the shelter. What are the coordinators doing? What are the shelter managers doing? Are they actually reaching out to rescue and networking with rescue? Because it always seems to come down to volunteers at San Jose Animal Advocates or Save a Kitten, these third-party nonprofits, that have been so supportive in the community. So anyway, Kit wrote this letter, and then she reached out to Angel Rios, a deputy city manager. And I want to read Mr. Rios's reply because we have it here.
Mhm.
And this is Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. Hi, Kit, let's meet. I do have to say that I'm disappointed with your approach as it is playing into the smear campaign led by others with ulterior motives, none of which involve improving the shelter. I will ask Katerina to find some time for us to meet as we are making progress on this front. Well, first of all, if they're making progress, they haven't told anybody. They haven't shared any progress with anybody. We haven't seen a town hall. I've requested a town hall on a number of occasions, and it falls on deaf ears.
Mhm.
But the statement that there is some sort of conspiracy, some sort of smear campaign being led by others with ulterior motives, I mean, this is right out of the Trump playbook. It's right out of the Trump playbook, right? Um, gaslight the public, play the blame game, be the victim. And this is from someone who pledged a little over 2 years ago to re-engineer the shelter. And we
Mhm.
really don't have much to show for it. In fact, the city audit confirms that during the last 2 years, this shelter has been operated even worse than anyone
Yep.
thought. So what do you think of this, Rebecca, about this alleged smear campaign? And I know there's other people in the community, we won't name their names, but they seem to believe
Yes.
that Sustain Our Shelters and people creating awareness about animals suffering and dying at the shelter is somehow bad because
Yeah.
we're
So
somehow we're somehow creating an image of the shelter that's negative when in fact we're simply telling the truth and
Mhm.
and trying to be real.
So there's certain people in the TNR community, and for those not familiar, that's trap, neuter, return. Was done with community and feral kitties. There's some people in that community who think that I'm trying to get that I'm making things worse for TNR services at the shelter by bringing to light certain things like I made a video this week that showed a cat who was being put out back into a feral colony who was friendly and adoptable. And I was told that I was going to get TNR canceled at the shelter, and I'm making it harder for the shelter to attract good vets and staff by making the shelter look bad. Well, the shelter has been making itself look bad already for years, so there's that. And they I like we were discussing earlier, anybody who's looking to get a job at the shelter would be doing their due diligence anyway. They would expect that there would be criticism of a shelter that's struggling. Um, I think even the good shelters get criticism because there's people who don't agree with policies of shelters in general.
Sure.
I mean, it happens. So anything that we have to say about the shelter is not new to anybody, and we're just like I was talking about the statistics of return to field being Michael crunched the numbers. Return to field numbers this year so far at the San Jose shelter are higher than adoption numbers for cats. And
Yeah.
these are things that you can find looking at the website. I mean, you can do the numbers and find this information anyway. So we're not saying anything new. And we're not trying to smear anybody. We're trying to get changes. And that's what we've been doing for years now. So
Let me ask you this. So how old was that cat, that friendly senior cat? I believe it had one eye. It came in for surgery, the reporting
yeah,
first party. couldn't pay for the surgery, so they brought the cat back into the shelter for the eye removal. And how old was that cat?
I thought he was a senior, but I don't have confirmation. We need to get more information about him from the shelter.
Right.
Um, but yeah, the caretaker of the colony where he was brought him in because he had something wrong with his eye and they couldn't afford to take him to the vet for that. So the shelter did the surgery and enucleated the eye, and we think he was already returned back to his colony or to the person who brought him in. And I understand circumstances can be different if there's a caretaker for a colony. Maybe they want the cat back, but
Sure.
the shelter has also been returning friendly older kittens back to the field. People want kittens, and here they're putting kittens back out there. And I don't know if they're trying to make it look like their numbers are better or something, but
Well, and
I don't understand it.
the interesting thing here is if you talk to any cat volunteer, they will tell you that the kennels up front, adoption kennels, are largely vacant, empty, empty. And I know that we're kind of at this point in the year where, there could be some supply demand, factors at work. But it's interesting to note that, like you said, I have the RTF numbers right here. I mean, this is, you've literally, in 2023, return to field was roughly 20% of the amount of adoptions, right? And in 2024, that number jumped to 39%. I mean, a massive increase, literally double. And this year, after not even one quarter, being up here, we still had a week to go when I looked at these numbers, 578 cats had already been returned to the field and only 379 adopted. So now it's completely flip-flopped, and you've got return to field running at 150% rate of adoptions. So there's clearly been a strategy here change here by the shelter, but as we've seen happen before with the shelter, they're not transparent, they don't communicate, they don't care to communicate with the community. They'll after the fact, they'll make excuses and come up and manufacture some kind of spin as to why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, they did that with the Maddie's Fund audit. I think it's quite clear there what happened with the Maddie's Fund audit, and this false narrative that Maddie's told them to pivot away from rescue, which,
well, now it seems like they're pivoting away from adoption, which seems self-defeating to me.
it's crazy, right? I mean, at some point you have to ask, what does this shelter offer the community for over $15 million a year? Taxpayers are paying $15.4 million a year to fund this animal shelter, and so they don't offer low-cost public spay neuter of own pets. It doesn't seem like, it seems like they're more interested to RTF an animal immediately rather than, network it to adoption. We see that there's a ringworm policy that if kittens have ringworm and there's no rescue interest, they're going to euthanize. They'll be euthanized. So it really begs the question, just what does the shelter in San Jose offer the community? And recently we've heard some comments by someone inside the shelter who is kind of a key player in the community cat program. And they've indicated that they've implied that there's been some sort of downgrade even in the TNR program, because they've mentioned that they may not be able to continue working at the shelter anymore because they were so proud of bringing TNR back to the San Jose Animal Care Center. And now apparently there's a serious question about, that program, continuing. And mind you, the amount of TNR that they were doing, wasn't significant. I think Dr. Cather said in December that, most of their TNR was just occurring on one day a week on Wednesdays when they had 3 vets on staff.
Hmm.
So again, I think this is a legitimate question that city council members have to ask. If they're truly being public servants and they're trying to serve the community and the public, they have to ask the question of the city manager's office and SJACS management, just what is it that you're offering the community?
Right, right. I mean, they make you license your pet if you get rabies vaccine, which I think we can agree that rabies vaccines are important, but yeah, they require licensing. They seem to be not wanting to adopt out cats much anymore. They're euthanizing uh, dogs that could go to rescue. So the CTNRs at one day, there's no public spay neuter. So what are they offering?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were promised by Director Kiska Icard at an update uh, in March of 24, 1 year ago. 1 year ago, she gave an update in front of the Neighborhood Services and Education Committee. You'll hear us just say NSE. That's
Mhm.
what NSE stands for. And she gave an update, and she said, we are going to start low cost spay neuter for owned animals starting in November. And that would run through March. Well, March is almost up, and we've gotten nothing. She hasn't delivered on that promise. And in fact, back in December, Matt Lesh said that he would give an update in May. So the goalposts get moved again, right? And so I got to think that for some reason they are lacking spay neuter capacity,
Yeah.
right? They're lacking veterinarians, or veterinarians that maybe are not proficient in spay neuter, right? And
Yeah.
so we do have something happy to report in that regard. And I'll let you report this because you're the vice commissioner of the county animal
Mhm.
commission. Well, why don't you tell us about the good news that came out of the county
So this
last
week,
week?
the Santa Clara County Shelter, which serves unincorporated areas, San Martin, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy, they put out a post saying that they are going to be having public spay neuter targeting particularly, I know that they want to impact big dogs particularly, but they're having dog and cat spay and neuter, and their prices are higher than what San Jose used to be. However, they are competitive with local vets, so they are cheaper than going to a local vet, and this is great news. This is a service that obviously it's highly needed, and so it's going to be great to see how that goes. In our area in San Jose, we also have we have the Mini Cat Town space shuttle, but
Right.
not a whole lot of other options if you want low cost. So it would be wonderful if San Jose could follow along and say, "Hey, look, we're doing this too." Maybe they could take advantage of, you
And
know,
I
those
mean,
prices and.
and mind you, I mean, to give you an idea of the pricing, I think for large dogs, the pricing is basically half.
Yeah.
It's half of what it would cost you to go to a local VCA vet.
Mhm.
I mean, at the end of October, I took in a little black kitty that I had to get neutered. And I went to 2 different VCA vets for a quote, and they both quoted me $1,200
For a cat,
for a cat.
holy moly.
Yeah. Yeah, two visits, the initial visit for $300, and blood work.
Hmm.
And then the neuter was going to cost 800. And I think there was another $100 for a consult or, whatever. So,
They
but
need
it
a
was,
collar and the stuff. Yeah.
I mean, ridiculous. And I reached out to a dear friend that does tremendous work pulling a lot of cats out of Los Banos. And I was able to get, a rescue rate. Believe it or not, the rescue rate just for neuter, I'm talking about no rabies, no microchip, no
Mhm.
vaccines. But the rescue rate for neuter at this vet was $80.
Wow. See, that's the kind of prices they used to have at San Jose, and I don't expect that if and when they bring this back, they probably won't be that low again, but
Right.
still way better than going to a vet.
Look, and I just want to come out and say, I am I am fully on board with TNR and with the trappers who are doing great work out there. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a dog eat dog, effort. It's probably very thankless, and I think, it's a grind. It's really a grind for these people, and I know a lot of them don't want to say anything negative about the shelter because, you know. They want to make sure that they keep a relationship there if they can get a TNR appointment,
They want to get appointments. Yeah.
right, whether it's at Nine Lives or HSSV or, so I understand that. I'm completely supportive of these people's that they're laser focused on
Hmm.
what they do. The problem that I have is they will talk behind your back. I know
Yeah.
this personally, and talk a lot of smack about people like myself and others that have tried to drive change, through the shelter. And
Mhm.
interestingly enough, county, so in order to roll out this low-cost spay neuter program for the public, they hired not one, but two full-time vets.
Hmm.
So county's able to hire vets. Why isn't San Jose able to? And I think that is the question because they're literally running a hospital, right? When they take in all these vets and they seem to get into this mode of warehousing dogs and cats that have been there for 5, 6 months. I mean, a lot of these large dogs are there for 10 months,
Hmm.
like Rufus,
Rufus was.
like Victor.
Hmm.
And then when they finally do get some sort of rescue interest, they haven't even been altered in-house. And then the shelter's like, well, we'll send them to HSSV or we'll send them to a vendor. And, that's fraught with a lot of risk because we saw what would happen to Victor. They doped him up in the morning with gabapentin and Travazole. They sent him to HSSV. He bit someone at HSSV, the medical staff member. They bring him back to San Jose and they euthanized him. And this was a gorgeous, stunning, playful German Shepherd. I think some of you may have seen a 27-second video of him through San Jose Animal Advocates with a foster, complete stranger that had never met this dog before. And this video was taken 2, 3 days before he was euthanized. And you cannot tell me that this dog had behavioral issues. When you see this dog sitting in the lap of a foster who's sitting Indian style,
Hmm.
I mean, sure, it's only 27 seconds of this dog, but I think if you just have common sense, you can see that this German Shepherd is being playful and he's showing all the consistent traits of being a large dog, German Shepherd, and they wound up euthanizing this dog, all because, I mean, the dog would still probably be alive to this day if they had just done the neuter in house.
Right.
Instead, they took him to a foreign place with
Unfamiliar people, unfamiliar
unfamiliar
place.
smells.
Yep.
So I see SJACS just shooting itself in the foot time and time again. And, Don Piazza and I in October, we actually did a simple pet compass calculation. We wanted to ask the question, how many dogs are currently in the custody of San Jose that are unaltered, that have been there 1 month or more? 1 month or more. We weren't counting dogs that came in the last week or two,
Right.
right? I mean, that would be unfair.
Right.
So we wanted to see how many dogs were unaltered at the shelter 1 month or more, and the number came out to 43.8%. 43.8%. So if you're not able to alter your dogs, then you can't compete with the other shelters that do for rescue interests.
Right.
It's pretty simple. And I don't understand why they can't figure this out. And I think it goes back again to just what is the spay neuter capacity of San Jose? And
Right.
why is it so poor? They have space. They have that front room, right? Where I think Dr. Chad
The
used to
front
operate.
clinic. Hmm.
It goes relatively unused. So the question then becomes is, why are you unable to hire more vets? And we see county just hired 2 full-time vets. So
Hmm.
I, this is the dichotomy here, and it's a question that San Jose hasn't been able to answer.
One thing that, as part of the Animal Advisory Commission that I'm on, which uh, we, I don't have decision-making capabilities, but we can make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And one thing we did, it was spearheaded by one of the other commissioners, was we recommended to county that to the Board of Supervisors that they uh, give a higher, like a bonus or a higher pay rate to the vet, to make that public so that they could be competitive and hire a vet. And it worked. That's how
Right.
they got the first full-time vet. And the city did that. And I believe that's how they hired Dr. Cather. They had a signing bonus. And I think that they really need to think about doing something like that again with this. I mean, so they can attract some more vets.
Yeah.
They claim they have a budget shortfall, but the shelter has over $15 million in last year's budget of this current fiscal year, and if why can't they take a chunk out of that and attract one or two more qualified vets? I think money talks.
Yeah. Well, I remember when Matt Cano was Public Works Director.
Mhm.
I was on the phone with Matt, and he left. He left at the end of, I think it was 2022.
Went to City of Milpitas.
Yeah, he went
Yeah.
to Milpitas, and not in engineering, as an assistant city manager.
Hmm.
And he had been at San Jose for, I don't know, 20 years or so.
Hmm.
So that was a little bit of a surprise to me that he left San Jose. But um, we were on the phone one day, and I said, Matt, I just saw a job search by Stockton, Tracy, someone in Stockton and Tracy. They were offering, this was during COVID, they were offering $100,000 for 3 months full time.
Hmm.
Boom, just 3 months full time, 100 grand, and
Yep.
then we'll talk later about options or whatever. And I said, Matt, how can you compete when you're only offering $145,000?
Right.
And so um, they eventually raised that to, I think, like 177 for full time. But by the time they got around to doing that and it passed city council, an entire year went by.
Hmm.
So you just missed all of these potential applicants because you didn't prepare. You weren't prepared. I really don't believe that there was a plan by SJACS management on what do we need to do coming out of COVID? What
You
does a
know,
shelter need to look like coming out of COVID?
it's not a bad idea to ask them this budget season. I mean, now is the time because they're entering budget hearings and everything. Maybe now is when they should do that again. Allocate some of that money again to attract vets. It's not a bad idea. Then we don't have to wait forever if they can allocate it now. Maybe we should be
And I
giving them
think,
some ideas.
and yeah, I mean, you've got to attract vets. You're literally running a vet hospital, right?
Hmm.
I mean, um, recently I spoke to a director who's in charge of the Sacramento County shelter, and their budget is actually less. It's 13 million, and yet they do 14,000 in intake, right?
Yeah.
So
And they have
SJACS,
multiple shelters, I think, too. I think they've got a
yeah,
couple facilities.
I believe so.
Yeah.
So SJACS is at $15.5 million, and I don't think they're doing 14,000 in intake.
Mm.
And yet Sacramento's at 14,000 with $13 million. So again, this also begs the question, how is the money being spent? We don't know because the mayor in their audit request, believe it or not, I mean, this was terrible omission, and maybe it was by design. We
Mm.
don't know. But the mayor's office never requested in the audit to the city auditor, do a review of the budget.
Mm.
Look at the accounting. Let's tell us, what are the biggest expenditures. Tell us how the Guardian Angel program funds are being used. I don't think they're all being used on rescue partners. They take in about 120,000 a year from public donations. And this money is a large part of it's supposed to be spent on rescues, helping rescues pull cats and dogs with medical cases. But we just don't know because there's no transparency. And from what I heard recently, Matt Lesh may put together some sort of report at the end of the year in December, about how the money's spent. But I would have much preferred city council adopt a resolution bringing the auditor back in to look at this, the accounting.
We do, one of our Sustain Our Shelters people had recently done an itemized public records request for itemized breakdown of how they spend the money. And so that's something we should cover soon. Something you should get a look at, because I bet you could figure out some conclusions from what we see.
Right.
But it would be good to talk about that sometime, because we mostly don't know what happens to that money. That Guardian Angel Fund money, I hear that it's there, and then you hear from rescues who say they can't get their vets paid because the shelter is, I don't know, not timely in paying with the gap fund. So
and they changed the program. Let's explain to our audience. They changed the program. It used to be that the rescue partner would get paid up front, right? They would get money from the shelter, then they can go to the vet and get the medical care that the animal requires. I know about this really well, given that I'm good friends with someone who's been involved in gap funds. And make no mistake, these gap funds have not been consistently offered to rescue partners. It's been kind of like pulling teeth to get the funding, right? You can get maybe $500 for a cat, $1,000 for a dog, something like that. But they changed this program. They now call it what? The Rescue Reimbursement Plan? RP. So now what they're doing is they're saying, hey, rescues, if you want to pull the cat and take it to a vet, that's great. You're going to pay for it up front and then submit us the paperwork later and we'll reimburse you.
Yeah, good luck.
I know of rescues that, I spoke to a veterinarian last month, I think it was, and they told me that they knew of rescues that they had done surgery on animals and they were still waiting to be reimbursed by San Jose from October.
I believe it.
Again, why? They have the money. They have the money in the Guardian Angel Fund. This is public donations. And this is why rescues have largely given up on San Jose.
They're pulling from other shelters now who, will not make it so difficult.
How long are you going to stick around when you get the same old, very poor customer service? The ball gets dropped repeatedly and nobody's held accountable. Right. That's the wild thing. It's the same people making the same mistakes over and over again, and it's just another day in the life of SJACS. And that's got to stop. That's got to stop. If you want to re-engage the rescue community, you really have to make a statement. Forget about these spinning things on social media. Just do your job, do it well, and word of mouth will take care of everything else. Right? Hey, I'm getting good service from San Jose. Oh, really? Yeah, tell me about it. And they can share this word of mouth spreads fast. It's the best way to market what you're doing. Um, you know, um, I know that a community engagement manager director at Palo Alto Humane came up with a program to re-engage rescues. She 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 had a meeting with Matt Lesh, had a meeting with Kiska, said, "Look, I want to help rescue partners get re-engaged," because she saw the numbers dropping off, just like all of us. So she said, "You know what? We will pay anything above gap, anything above and beyond gap. We will write the check." Palo Alto, you mean, paying for San Jose kitties and some dogs. They did this for a year, and it did not go all that smoothly. There were a lot of administrative time suck kind of things regarding invoices and what have you. But at the end of the year, I believe Palo Alto Humane had spent about $40,000 trying to help rescues get re-engaged. And I know one of the rescues was Andrea's dream. And I don't know if Andrea's going to continue this she would focus on pulling medical cased cats. And I just don't know if that's going to, if Andrea is going to continue to do that, because I know that Palo Alto Humane has decided to kind of move on and terminate their support for this program that they themselves created and managed. They wanted to try and help the shelter, help it get back on its feet. They saw no improvement, and they made a decision that,
Yeah.
you guys are still not getting better. And I'm sure the death of Rufus, gave, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure some things, as Kit O'Doherty had pointed out, there are some red flags here that people in the community have a big problem with, and they just never seem to be corrected. So, for example, there are other shelters out there where it's much easier to pull dogs out of. I know for a fact that Don Piazza has been pulling out of Savaca County, even Contra Costa County. And in fact, she told me about an experience she had with the woman who's in charge of rescue placement at Contra Costa County. Her name is Shelley Presser. And Dawn was blown away by how organized they were. She got a video of the dog, complete dog notes, behavioral notes, medical record, and even playground notes.
Nice.
And I mean, Dawn was blown away. They make it so easy. And Dawn said, you should really teach a class on this. I mean, to other shelters, because everything was just boom, boom, boom. And Dawn's been doing this for what, 11, 12, 13 years. And she says, I can honestly say that at Contra Costa County, there was nothing missing. I didn't have to ask for anything else. It was all organized. It was all there. YouTube video of the animal. In fact, she gets emails like, the following dogs are at risk for euthanasia, April 2nd. There's a list and descriptions. And so,
Mhm.
if San Jose is ever going to up their game and get back in the game to re-engage with rescues, this is what they need to do.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know if it's laziness, but they are for some reason incapable of just putting basic documents together. I know that when people have gone to pull dogs that first became available at SJACS, I mean, it's like pulling teeth. Nothing's done ahead of time. Oh, you're asking for a printout of the medical records?
Yeah.
Oh, you need the rabies certification?
X-rays or it's
It's just, for some reason the bar is very, very low at SJACS. And I think that goes to a lack of leadership. And you have these directors are making well over $200,000 a year. Jay Tirado, Kiska iCard,
Mhm.
and Dr. Cather, and the bar's just way too low. It shouldn't be this low. And you see other shelters out there who are attracting rescue partners, because
And they're
they
doing this just every day. They're providing all this stuff to the rescues, whereas down here you got to beg for it.
right. And
Yeah.
like Dawn said, she goes, I can't think of anything really, that's been missing whenever I pull a dog out of Contra Costa. So it really says a lot.
That's awesome. Hey, everybody. That's it for today's show. We have a lot more to show you from this particular recording session, so we'll do another episode soon with all of that, including some information we've recently learned about deaths of animals at the shelter. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye. The Sustainer Shelters blogcast is hosted by Rebecca Davis Matthews and Michael Wagner and edited by Rebecca Davis Matthews. You can find the vlog on YouTube and the podcast on your favorite podcatcher, including Amazon, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. All rights reserved, copyright 2025 by Sustainer Shelters.